Welcome to Burnout-Free Me, your success and well-being podcast. I'm Dr. Amy Grimm, and I am so glad you're here. Let's go from burnout to breakthrough together. Hello, everyone. You are listening to Daring DVM, and this is episode number 67. Today, we are talking about something that brings a lot of stress to veterinary professionals. It's something that I've had to do a lot of work on myself, as well as help my clients work on themselves. And that is perfectionism. So for some of you listening to this, you already may know that yes, you have perfectionistic tendencies. I think I identify most with this group because during my formative school years, I kinda knew that I liked things to be perfect. Now, when I was in grade school, this was before the time of computers, so everything we did was handwritten. And if I made a mistake or did not like something, I would throw the entire page away and start over just so that I could make sure that everything was exactly how I wanted it to be and as perfect as it could be. Which, you can imagine, wasted a lot of time. And as I got older, I realized that this level of attention to detail and this desire wasn't really necessary. And it was also hindering me in some ways. So through a lot of practice and self-work, I have been able to slowly let go of my desire for everything to be just perfect. And once I reached this point in my veterinary schooling, I no longer needed to get the perfect grades and hand in the perfect report and have the neatest, most perfect completed project. And I thought, hey, this is great. I am making big strides. I am no longer as stressed and as anxious, and I'm actually okay with things not being perfect. So I went on living my life, and I think this is where I start to identify with the second group of people who are those of us who are secretly perfectionists, yet we don't realize it. Because when we think of people who we think are perfectionists, we imagine them to be very well organized and have their schedules planned, and all the things are planned on the calendar for months in advance, and every little detail is taken care of, and the work that they do doesn't have any faults or mistakes. And to be honest, many of us are over this by this time in our lives. We realize that not everything has to be as neat and tidy and perfect as we once thought. And so instead we live our lives where we do things that maybe don't produce the most perfect work, or we look at our house and we're like, it's definitely not super neat and tiny and organized, or we forget about plans or cancel plans, or our social life is a little bit messy, and maybe our kitchen or our closet isn't arranged in the way that we would like it to be, and none of these things seem perfect, so we think that we must not be perfectionists. We assume that perfectionists have these perfect lives, and when we look at our own lives, we're like, yeah, no way that's perfect, so obviously I cannot be a perfectionist. We have this underlying thought that a perfectionist has a perfect life. And this thought could not be further from the truth. It's one of those unconscious scripts running in the back of our minds that prevents us from seeing that, actually, we are perfectionists. You see, when you're somebody with perfectionistic tendencies, you are acutely conscious of what is wrong with you and your work and your life. That's like the hallmark of being a perfectionist. So when your brain is offering you thoughts that you are not a perfectionist because you don't have a perfect life, and you can see that other people must be perfect because their lives appear to be so perfect, so obviously they must be doing the work, or they are better than me, or they're naturally more skilled, or anything you tell yourself that gives off the vibes of less than, or not good enough, or should be better, that is actually perfectionist thinking right there. There is nobody on this planet who has a perfect life and does things perfectly. That is the truth. But somebody who has a perfectionist brain has a brain that tells them that people like this do exist, and therefore I am the one who is lacking. It's like this catch-22. You keep telling yourself that you can't be a perfectionist because your life doesn't look perfect, yet you create this feeling of less than and not being good enough and lacking, and because of that, you try harder to make things better or to be good enough, and when that is not working, you beat yourself up further and sometimes just quit altogether because you believe that there must be something inherently wrong with you. Does this sound familiar? Can you relate? If you look around and your life doesn't seem perfect, that does not mean you are not a perfectionist. If you're constantly thinking about what is wrong with your life and what you need to improve, that is actually a very big sign that you have perfectionist tendencies. It's this belief that things could always be better. And that's actually why perfectionism is such a sneaky thing. It sounds so good because, yes, we want to believe that things can always be better. That sounds good, right? And I see this in a lot of veterinarians and some other veterinary professionals, and especially women. Because with our entire upbringing, we are taught to be very self-critical. From a very young age, those of us who are women or socialized as women have been told that we can always be better and that us and our lives should be in this constant state of self-improvement. Look at the self-help industry in general. Look at diet culture. Look at the exercise industry. Look at the beauty and makeup industries. There is so much evidence of this narrative. Now, the thing is, I am a life coach, so I do believe in improving people's lives and helping them to make their lives better. But it comes from a very different place than perfectionism. Perfectionism is this idea that you need to somehow be better or do better because there is something lacking or something wrong with you, or that you and your life are not good enough. On the other hand, when you are choosing to improve yourself or your life because it is coming from a place of contentment and happiness, and you think to yourself, what I have is amazing, and why wouldn't I want to have more fun or be happier or be more at peace, then that is a completely different mindset. Perfectionist thinking has you believing that you need to improve yourself or your life in some way because you are unworthy as you are, and the way you are is not okay, and therefore you need to be better. True self-improvement is deeply believing that you are already amazing and badass and capable and are loving your life, and it would be even more amazing to build upon that. So one of the reasons I think it took me a long time to realize my own perfectionistic tendencies is because we tend to think that perfectionism only shows up in certain areas of our lives. And for me, a lot of that centered around schoolwork and studying and exams and projects and final details. But the truth is, those of us who have perfectionistic tendencies are generally like this in every aspect of our lives. We just don't see it yet. Yet the truth is, the way you think in one area of your life is the way you think everywhere in your life. The way your brain works in one area of your life is the way your brain works in every area of your life. It's the same brain. I touched on this briefly in last week's episode where we were talking about anxiety and our veterinary doctor brains and how we are primed for this way of anxious thinking because of all of our schooling and everything that we had to do to get to the point of being a practicing veterinarian. This is the doctor brain I was talking about. So if you think like a veterinarian at work, then you're also going to start thinking like a veterinarian at home and in your personal life. So we're constantly going to search for solutions and problem solve and look for things that are wrong or that could go wrong and potentially be disastrous. And we're going to be afraid of making mistakes or failing or getting things wrong. and we're going to be comparing ourselves to those around us. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go check it out. And there's also a worksheet that I created to help you with some of this anxious thinking. You can download it by going to the show notes. There's a link there. Or just Google daringdvm.com/anxiety fix. I really encourage you to check it out because it will help you start to see patterns in your own thinking. So it's very similar. If you are a veterinarian and you're using your doctor brain at work, you are also using your doctor brain at home. And that's exactly how perfectionism works. You believe that there is something in your life that could be better and that your life would be better if you were better, or if your circumstances were better, or if something in your life was better. And if you pay attention, you'll see that it's not just in one area of your life, which you may already recognize. It actually bleeds into the rest of your life too. So let's go through a few examples so you can see what I'm talking about. You can see perfectionism in the workplace, like when you're experiencing imposter syndrome or referring a case to another doctor, not because it is medically the next step, but because you don't believe in your own ability to handle the case. Or you may believe that if you were somehow a better doctor, you would be able to solve this chronic skin allergy case and not have to see the patient month after month. If you were somehow smarter, then maybe you wouldn't have to look things up as frequently as you do. If you had done more research, then maybe you would have realized that there were other diagnostic tests you could have run, and now you're judging yourself because one of your colleagues suggested a particular test to you, and you feel stupid because you should have figured it out on your own, right? I bet some of you can recognize this. There's always this thinking pattern that your work or you at work could somehow be better. Another place this shows up, especially in women, is with body image. I mentioned it earlier, the diet culture and the health and fitness industries, and how obsessed we are with the way women look and what size they are and how healthy we are. And we can become fixated on our bodies. We can become fixated on our meals or our exercise routines. We start to think of our bodies as these things that we should be able to control and shape and mold into whatever version of perfect we believe would make us better and more worthy of love and attention. Take a moment to think about how you show up in your relationship with your own body. In the back of your mind, is there a thought that is telling you you could always be thinner or fitter or a different shape or have bigger boobs or a smaller waist, or your hair could be shinier or longer, or your skin could have less freckles or blemishes, or whatever it is that you are fixated on? So many of us experience these types of thoughts on a daily basis. Another area in which perfectionism shows up is our home environment. We believe that our homes should be reflections of who we are as people, and we get so fixated on creating the perfect environment that we become stressed out when things aren't exactly the way we believe they should be. We become stressed because our house isn't organized, or we haven't completed a home project that we started, or our partner puts the dishes in the sink instead of into the dishwasher, or there is dog or cat hair on the couch again and you just vacuumed, or your teenagers left their socks on the floor, or another empty cup in the living room. And we tell ourselves these stories that we just want our houses to be a certain way and to remain a certain way, and then we won't feel as stressed. But friend, life is messy, and things are not always going to be perfectly in place. Yet, deep inside, you may have some kind of unconscious script running in the background telling you that your home should look better, or it should be neater or cleaner. And this is always going to cause stress and anxiety because it's always coming from a place of not being good enough. Perfectionism also shows up in our relationships. It can be professional relationships or personal ones. For example, you may believe that your husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend could do something to be a better partner. Maybe you believe your friend could have said something or shown up differently when you were struggling, and this would have made them a better friend. And it's not always just about the other person, it can be about the relationship itself. You compare your relationships to other people and think that in some way your relationship is not good enough, or it could be better or should be better. And then you believe that the other person in this relationship is somehow not meeting your standards, and it often leads to more judgment about the other person. And in some cases, you start judging yourself for the way that you're thinking about the other person, and it just goes on and on. And it all comes back to this fundamental belief that somehow you could be better. Somehow you are not good enough, or you are not doing enough, or you must be settling, because you have this unconscious belief that if you were good and worthy enough, your life would be much better than it is. So you can see how this affects every area in your life. And this way of thinking is so ingrained in us that I don't think many of us even question it. And like I said, I'm a life coach, and I'm all about helping people improve their lives and creating better experiences for themselves. And I also believe that it's not some inherent fact or rule that we should all be trying to get better. Yet we have these social narratives that are taught to us from such a young age. These narratives that humans are inherently flawed or unworthy, and we need to constantly try to improve ourselves for some unspecified reason. It's like we just believe that our life would be better if we were better. And we have this gnawing sense that we're not good enough or things should be different, yet it's not totally clear why. It just is. And this kind of thinking produces several results. Firstly, it prevents us from truly being present and enjoying our lives in the moment. We can fail to see how amazing and beautiful our lives already are. We forget to be grateful. We forget to celebrate our wins and our accomplishments. And that's not to say that everything is amazing all the time. There will be times in our lives where we experience grief and loss and hurt, and our trust is broken. Or we're dealing with a particularly difficult bout of depression or burnout. These are real and valid emotions and experiences that we have. Yet these insidious types of perfectionist thoughts lead us to believe that we're experiencing these difficult things because there's something wrong with us or in our lives. Perfectionism also produces procrastination. If you truly believe that you're never going to do something right, then it's going to be difficult for you to convince yourself to start. And you'll tell yourself stories like, I don't know how to do this, or even if I figure it out, it's probably not going to be good enough or work anyway, or maybe somebody in my life is going to disapprove. And because we want to avoid those outcomes, we end up just avoiding the work until the anxiety and the pressure from our circumstance or a deadline becomes so great that it motivates us to take action because those feelings are even more uncomfortable than the ones we are trying to avoid. This is why so many of us incorrectly believe that we work better under pressure. If you keep doing this over and over throughout your life, you will eventually become overwhelmed and exhausted. Perfectionism also causes us to fail. It does this because we create these fantasy versions of how well we think our lives should be, or how well everything should go, and how amazing everything should look. So you may be somebody who thinks that you should get up at 5 a.m. every day, and you get your workout in, and then you have enough time for yourself before the kids or your spouse gets up, and then you're going to create these amazing, healthy, nutritious breakfasts and lunches for the kids. And you're still going to have time to go to work, and you're going to show up and work hard and be the best version of yourself that you can be in your career. And then you're going to go home and you're going to have all this time to prepare these healthy, nutritious dinners. And you are also going to get your 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night, in addition to all of this time that you're going to have to pursue your creative hobbies and socialize with your friends. And you know what? Volunteering is also really good. So you also amazingly have all this time to volunteer on the weekends, and you create this whole vision for your life that is kind of unrealistic. And then even though you kind of know this is unrealistic, when you're not living into this perfect version of your life, your brain tells you that there must be something wrong, and therefore you start to feel bad. because you assume that you are failing at life. And you can see how this also produces critical tendencies. Our perfectionistic tendencies create self-critical tendencies. We may see this as the type of thinking that shows up when we believe that somebody else must be better because their life appears better. So we judge ourselves and our own lives, and in an attempt to feel better, we start judging them and critiquing them. So if you find yourself being critical of others, it's usually because you are not secure in yourself and your own life. If you truly believed that you were worthy and good enough and you loved yourself, you would be so much more accepting of other people. When you don't judge yourself all the time, you also stop judging other people all the time. And I have done this kind of work on myself, and I have noticed how I'm not as critical of other people and their choices. I'm not looking for things that are good or bad about them or judging whether I think they are smarter than me or fitter than me or thinner than me or have a more interesting life than me. I'm just enjoying them for who they are, because my brain is no longer in this constant state of evaluation and judgment and critique. And I'm far less critical of myself. I'm less critical of other people, and I'm less critical of myself. Now, that's not to say I don't still have struggles of my own or there are things that I'm working on, but it's become much, much easier and more tolerable and far less painful. Another thing that these perfectionist tendencies tend to create in our lives is pessimism. Things can never be perfect, yet we keep telling ourselves that they could always be better, yet there's this understanding that you're never really going to get there because deep down you kind of know that perfectionism isn't realistic. And because you believe that you're not good enough and constantly telling yourself that you need to be better, but then also telling yourself, well, realistically, that's never going to happen, it leads to this pessimistic outlook. This idea of, why bother? It's not going to matter anyway. And that's one of the reasons why people with perfectionistic tendencies are also more likely to suffer from depression. Another unintended result of perfectionism is that it produces controlling behavior. If you believe that something needs to be perfect in order to be good or worthy, then you're going to try to control or manipulate whatever it is in order to achieve that result. So if you want the perfect relationship, you are going to start controlling or telling your partner what you think they should or shouldn't do. You use the relationship to prove to yourself that you are good and worthy enough to be in a relationship. And in order for you to prove that to yourself, the relationship needs to look a particular way. So that means you start to manage your partner in an attempt to produce this vision of what you believe a perfect relationship should look like. So in your perfect relationship, maybe your partner always takes out the trash, or never forgets your anniversary or any other important date that you may have. Maybe your partner surprises you with flowers or small gifts. And when they don't fit this mold perfectly, then you will put pressure on them to do as you want them to do. And you will tell them things like they are not meeting your needs, or that if they loved you, they would do the thing that you want them to do. It can also show up in other ways, like removing food items from the house because you believe that your partner needs to take better care of themselves or needs to lose weight. You believe that in order to have a perfect relationship, your partner needs to be in perfect health and look a certain way. You may even believe this about yourself, and you may have prior or current experience with an eating disorder. The thing is, perfectionism always causes us to focus on external appearances. If you believe that there are people out there who have these seemingly perfect lives, then you're going to always look for evidence that other people have what you want. And when you're always looking for evidence that other people have the things you want, it will lead you to focus on the things that you don't have. So you start to believe things like, if I just lost 10 pounds, or if my partner would just do this one thing for me, or if I just had a different boss, or if I could just have a job like my friend does, or if I could just earn more money, then I would be happier. Then I would be happy in my life. So you can see how perfectionistic tendencies can also lead to jealousy and envy. Even though we don't know what is going on behind the scenes in somebody else's life, we just believe that they must have something better, and that if we had that too, we would also be better and happier. And because we don't have those same things, it brings us to shame. Perfectionism is deeply rooted in shame. This idea that who we are is somehow inherently unworthy or not good enough, so we have to manage and control our lives to try to fit a perfect image just so that we can feel good about ourselves. We need to improve ourselves and our lives in order for us to be okay with the way that we are. Because surely if people knew the truth, they wouldn't find us as lovable or worthy. And this is so painfully ironic because when your brain tells you that something needs to look a certain way or be a certain way in order to be accepted and to not be rejected, what ends up happening is you constantly create the feeling of rejection and not feeling good enough for yourself because you reject yourself and where you are in your life right now. The underlying belief is that I am not perfect, so I am not worthy. If I were perfect, then I would always feel loved and accepted and feel great. You tell yourself that how you are now is not okay, so you end up just rejecting yourself, which is really one of the emotions that you fear most. The truth is that no one is ever perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. And even if it could be, the idea of perfection is totally subjective. Your brain will never allow you to believe that anything in your life is perfect or good enough because perfectionism is subjective, so you're just going to keep moving the goalpost. You're going to keep believing that something could be better or done differently. You're never going to tell yourself, oh, I finally reached perfection. It's like this lie that your brain tells you that if you were just good enough, if you could just get good enough, then your brain will leave you alone and let you believe that you're okay and that your life is fine, and then you won't have these negative emotions. If you just improve yourself enough, your brain will stop saying mean things to you. It will allow you to believe that you are acceptable and that your life is good and worthy. But your brain is never going to do that if you have this underlying belief that you are inherently unworthy. So what are you going to do? The way to get rid of self-critical thinking and to truly be happy in the moment is to accept imperfection. Perfection is subjective, so you cannot rely on your brain to tell you when you've achieved it because your brain is never going to let you believe that you've achieved it. So one thing that is helpful is to start questioning whether you would even know what perfect was if you found it, and would your brain even let you believe that this is perfection? It's this unconscious, implicit belief that your brain will somehow recognize and tell you when you've done enough, or when you become good enough. It's this idea of, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'll just know when I find it. And that's never true. Your brain will never do this. You are the one who gets to decide that you are good enough just as you are. And if you're struggling with this concept, it's because you think that in order to feel good about yourself, you need to meet a certain standard. Yet, hypothetically, when you do achieve that goal, you realize that you still don't really feel happy, so then you change the goal again. And you keep pursuing all of these different things and trying to improve or change or control other people or situations or things about your life, constantly believing that if you could just make it better, then you would feel better. What if instead you could just love and accept yourself for just existing? Think about one of your beloved pets. Our pets are not perfect, yet we love them just for existing. We don't really expect them to do anything or to contribute to the upkeep of the house or cook the food or help us with our finances or listen to us or remember our birthdays or tell us that we're beautiful or take care of us when we're sick. We just love them for being them. And even when they do things like shit on the carpet, or get hair on the couch, or chew our shoes up, or steal food from the counter, we still love them. What if you could just love yourself for existing? Because that's truly the work, and that is the journey that is worth being on. The journey of accepting your own imperfection, which I think actually takes less energy than trying to be perfect. What I would encourage you to think about this week is, why do you think something in your life needs to be better? Why is it important? And get really specific. If you are already 100% worthy and lovable just for existing just as the way you are, then why does it matter? Practice the belief that you can be flawed and lovable. You can be flawed and worthy. Think about the times that you have made mistakes and other people have still loved you. Think about all the times other people in your life have made mistakes and you have still loved them. Because the truth is, you don't love other people because they are perfect. You just love them because there's essentially something them about them that you like. And that, my friend, is true for you too. There is just something essentially you about you that other people like and love. And you can learn to love and like yourself in that way too. When you are happy and content and loved, it is perfectly okay to want to improve things in your life. But really notice how this desire for things to improve feels very different than when it comes from a place of not being happy and not feeling good enough. That is how you know if you are on the right journey. That is how you create a deliberate life of intention, fulfillment, and joy. And if you'd like help with this or support along the journey, then please reach out to me. I would love to help you see how brilliant and amazing and capable and worthy and loved you already are. You can find me at Daring DVM on Instagram, Dr. Amy Grimm on LinkedIn, or visit me on daringdvm.com. And don't forget to check out the show notes for the link to your free guide in helping you uncover some of your anxious thinking. My friend, I love who you are, and even more than that, I love who you're becoming. Dare to dream.